Tropical Storm Milton has formed in the Gulf of Mexico today. Where will it head? Who will it impact? How much rain? Those will all be answered in this video. Hi, welcome back to the Weather Forecast Center. This is John, here to give you the latest on what is now Tropical Storm Milton. He is a 45-mile-an-hour storm. As you can see from the infrared satellite picture, the convection is starting to blow up in the center of the storm. It is currently moving to the northeast at 5 miles an hour. Its maximum sustained winds are 45 miles an hour. And the National Hurricane Center has put out a cone for this storm. This is the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. As of 11 o'clock Eastern, is positioned here in the Bay of Campeche. Is slowly going to move to the east tomorrow, going into Monday, and start picking up speed as we go forward through the week. As of right now, it is projected to be a major hurricane in the in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Will it maintain its strength to Florida? That will be determined as we get closer to Monday or Tuesday. Pretty much all of the model guidance have been projecting where it will make landfall. Let's change the color on that. Let's change it to black so y'all can see it. So basically from here to about here is basically where the landfall projected path will be. The actual path will be determined as we get closer to landfall. These are the mile guidance of the strength of what Milton will be. The majority of the consensus indicate a hurricane, possibly up to a Cat 3, but mostly in the Category 1 and 2 area. We have an outlier that could get it up to a 5. We have a couple of members that want to put it as a 4. But right now, the consensus is at least a Category 2 hurricane coming into Florida. I will now take you through the model guidance of each model and where it will go. We will start with the GFS, starting at 1,000 millibars. Is right now 1,006, so it's a little bit stronger on this run. As we progress forward, goes down to a 979 millibar tropical storm. As we continue forward, at this point it would be a hurricane, and we will stop it right here. And now it's projected to be a 954 millibar hurricane coming into the Tampa Bay region. Don't want a hurricane going into the Tampa Bay region since they're still cleaning up from Helene. This is the Euro guidance. This has a 1,009, so this is weaker than what it is right now since it's 1,006 millibars. As we continue this forward, gets it down to about 981 on Tuesday morning. As we continue this forward, we'll stop it right here. Brings it in as a 977 millibar hurricane into Tampa Bay. This is the Canadian mile, starting off at 1,008 millibars, so it's closer to what it is right now, which is 1,006. As we move this forward, gets down around the Yucatan Peninsula, and it's a 977 millibar hurricane north of the Yucatan Peninsula. As we continue this forward, we'll take it to right here. Comes up as a 989 hurricane south of Tampa Bay. Around, we'll say, south of Sarasota. This is the icon model, starting off at 1,008 millibars, so it's close to what it is right now. As we continue this forward, gets north of the Yucatan Peninsula as a 974. And we'll stop it right here. Brings it into Tampa Bay region as a 979 hurricane. This one looks a little bit different, but this is the AI model. To continue this forward, it's north of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's a 989. Continue this forward. Now we're into Wednesday. And wow, that's new. Brings it in as a 977 near Tampa Bay. Here are the key messages for Tropical Storm Milton. Milton will become a hurricane and will impact Florida around Wednesday. Either timing is still up in the air. Rainfall rainfall from this storm is undetermined at this time, but in general, 5 to 10 inches of rain is possible. Locally, higher amounts are possible. I have done a model depiction of rainfall, and they vary widely. I will go over them right now. I don't have them on this post. I don't have it on my card here, but um, as far as the GFS, I saw rainfall amounts of 18 inches in Tampa Bay, 9 to 15 inches in surrounding areas. That includes Sarasota, Bradenton, and areas north of Tampa. 10 to 15 inches around the Big Bend, all the way up through to Jacksonville, Florida. The Central Florida, basically the inland part, 2 to 5 inches, and 8 inches in Miami. That is from the GFS. Um, from the Euro, 5 to 10 inches of rain from Big Bend of Florida to Jacksonville, Florida. 5 to 8 inches in Tampa Bay and surrounding areas. Central Florida, which is basically the inland areas of Central Florida, 3 to 5 inches. And Miami gets 2 to 4 inches. As per the Icon model, Tampa Bay, Central Florida, and Space Coast gets 8 to 18 inches of rain. South Florida, 2 to 4 inches of rain. North Florida, 1 to 2.5 inches of rain. And the Canadian model, Southwest Florida gets 5 to 10 inches of rain. The rest of Florida gets 2 to 5 inches of rain. Since that is a further south solution. Right now, as far as the strength, I think GFS is an outlier. And the Canadian is an outlier. They pretty much pinned this down to a Wednesday landfall, and possibly will be in the Tampa Bay region. But I will mark, but anywhere from the southern Big Bend down to Fort Myers should be on alert. This is not a forecast, this is just an opinion. More like a gut feeling of what this could become. Now we will take a look at the lower 48. The SPC Outlook has issued a slight risk of severe weather for tonight in northeastern Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, with a marginal risk surrounding that goes through most of Wisconsin. Well, that's not fair. Hold on. Let's try that again. That's your slight risk. This is your marginal risk, which includes the northwest portion of lower Michigan, the UP of Michigan, and much of Wisconsin will have a chance of thunderstorms. So the risk is primarily hail. There's a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter here in northeastern Wisconsin and the far southwestern corner of the UP of Michigan, with a 5% risk surrounding that. As far as wind, just a general 5% chance of wind exceeding 60 miles an hour. Um, Max winds will probably max out about 65 miles an hour with that for tonight. Tomorrow, the area shifts east. Have a slight risk of severe weather here for Ohio, uh, eastern Ohio, far northern West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, and far southwestern New York State. What the heck? Get off. No. This does include a 2% risk of a tornado tomorrow in the slight risk area. Hail, a 15% chance of hail in this slight risk area, with a 5% risk surrounding that. I would think that this could be up to 1.5 inches in diameter of hail. And wind, there is a 15% chance of wind exceeding 60 miles an hour in the slight risk area, 5% in the marginal risk area. This area here, 70 miles an hour. This area here, 65 miles an hour. The current hazards that is out for tonight. Heat alerts here in the southwest. Wind alerts up here in the northern Great Lakes. And a flood watch here for central and southern Florida. Now, I will leave it here and explain what's going on here. There is a low pressure center in front of the tropical storm Milton that is preceding. There is a batch of moisture preceding the tropical storm. That's why the flood watches are up, because that will dump a few inches of rain before the tropical system arrives. So that's why the flood watches are up in central and southern Florida. Temperatures for the next 7 days: 60s in Maine, in the and the upper Midwest, 50s in northern Minnesota, primarily 70s and 80s in much of the United States, 90s in the South Central states, 100s in the desert Southwest. On Monday, upper 50s in Maine, 60s in the Great Lakes and the Northeast, 70s and 80s through much of the United States, 90s in Texas, and 100s in the desert Southwest, and 90s in the valleys of California. For Tuesday, 50s and 60s in the Northeast, 70s and 80s through much of the United States, 90s in Texas, 90s in the valleys of California, and 100s in the desert Southwest. For day 4, Tuesday. Okay, I did this wrong. Hold on. Okay, so this is actually 60s in May. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. That's why. For Wednesday, 50s and 60s in Northeast and the Great Lakes, 70s and 80s through much of the United States. Bring this down a little bit so you can see. 90s in Texas and the valleys of California, and 100s in the desert Southwest. For Thursday, um, possible upper 40s. Hold on a second. Yeah, that's right. Possible upper 40. Whoa. Did I get my days mixed up? Yes, I did. That's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay. Okay, this is different than what I have. Okay. So Wednesday is actually Tuesday on my list. Okay. So I'm going to start this from the top again. So for tomorrow, Sunday, 60s in Maine and the upper Midwest, 50s in northern Michigan or northern Minnesota, 70s and 80s through much of the United States, 90s in the south central states, including Texas, and 100s in the desert Southwest, and that includes one teens. For Monday, upper 50s in Maine, otherwise 60s in Great Lakes and Northeast, 70s and 80s through much of the United States, 90s in Texas, and 100s in the desert Southwest, and 90s in the valleys of California. Tuesday, 50s and 60s in the Northeast, 70s and 80s through much of the United States, 90s in Texas, 90s in the valleys of California, and 100s in the desert Southwest. Wednesday, 50s and 60s in Northeast and Great Lakes, 70s and 80s through much of the United States, 90s in Texas and the valleys of California, and 100s in the desert Southwest. For Thursday, possible upper 40s, otherwise 50s and 60s in Northeast and Great Lakes. The upper 40s will be primarily in the higher elevations of New Hampshire and Maine. 70s and 80s through much of the United States. 90s in basically up and down the plains, and 100s in the desert Southwest. On Friday, 50s and 60s in the Northeast, 70s and 80s through much of the United States, 90s in Texas, and 100s in the desert Southwest. And for Friday, what's that? That's Friday? Okay, they goofed. Okay, they goofed. This is Saturday next week. 60s, 70s, and 80s through 90% of the United States, 90s in Texas, and in the desert Southwest. That is all I have for y'all this evening. I will be back with frequent updates on what is now Tropical Storm Milton and the track and rainfall forecast. Um, until then, have a safe and wonderful Saturday night, and I will talk to you again soon.